Well, welcome to More Faith with Kisha. I am Kisha, my last name's Moore, and I am giving my faith testimony of how God told me to move from California to Dallas and then later to Atlanta. All right. So, if you have not watched the first two parts of the video, part 1 and part 2, I strongly encourage you to watch it. That way, what I'm saying right now will make sense. And it's just a journey of faith. And one of the things is, I forgot to mention it in my other 2 videos, but here it is. I have my first published book, Testimonies of a Faithful God. And in this book, I give 13 testimonies of how God has been faithful in my life, how he has provided protection, provision, and opened up doors when they could have stayed closed, but it was all through the faith of God. So, testimonies of a faithful God. God is faithful. He provides protection, he provides provision, and he is God. So, here's the back. Yay! Excuse the sound effects. Yay! Here's the front. So, this is my published book, which is published through my published company, More Faith Publishing. You see the more? You get it, the more? Okay, so you can purchase this book on my website, morefaithwithkisha.com. I will also put the website in the description. So back to the testimony. So part 3 of the testimony, the last part of the testimony, I'll talk about my first night in Dallas, how I slept on a blow-up mattress, and I was just thinking, okay, God, I'm here. I did what you told me to do. Like, what is next? What is the next step of faith? I didn't know what to expect. So now I'm in Dallas, wake up the next morning, but I was like, okay, God, the first thing I didn't want to work like right away. I didn't want to just start. I wanted to get familiar with the area. Every state, people drive different. I am not one of those people who just get comfortable like on the road, driving somewhere different. I just need to get familiar with it. So I wanted to take 2 weeks just to get familiar with the area, just to get familiar with, driving on the road. I just wanted to get familiar with this. So the first 2 weeks, it was just prayer. I probably fasted. I don't know, fasting, getting familiar with the area. And that was the first 2 weeks. So after the 2 weeks was up, it was time for me to find a job. Like I said, when I moved from California to Dallas, after paying my rent for 2 months, I only had $700 and something left. So after buying a blow-up mattress, after purchasing food, after purchasing cleaning supplies, that money would surely run out. So it was time for me to look for a job. And one of the things was I prayed and I was like, God, just send me where you want me to go. Just open up the door that will be the door that you want to open for me. I did not want to go from one depressing job, which is where I came from when I was in California, to another depressing job. I just wanted to be somewhere different, a different environment. So I filled out an application online for this other call center job. The crazy thing is, when I stepped foot in a job in that company, the energy was so depressing. It was so dark. It was like there was no joy. And I'm a person who, people will say I'm goofy. If you know me, you'll say I'm goofy. But, the work environment, like, I like to talk to my coworkers, crack jokes, and just, like, have fun or whatever. But that place just seemed very depressing, but it was like a good paying job. Went on the job interview, and I remember leaving. I was like, you know what? If they do offer me the job, like, I'm not going to take it. And this is with me not even having a job. I did not want that job. I'm sensitive to like certain environments and energy or whatever. And it was just like not it. So I was like, okay, if they do hire me, but guess what? They didn't even hire me. And then I was offended. I was like, how dare you not offer me the job? Anyways, that was just the grace of God. He closed that door, because I say I wasn't going to accept it, but I probably would have, because you say something, but when you low on funds or whatever, I probably would have been like, you know what, I'll just take it and work here until another door opens. But when you do things like that, sometimes you get stuck. you get stuck. And what you say will only be temporary. You can make a permanent decision off of a temporary situation. So I'm glad God did not open that door. The next job interview was at a car dealership for a business development representative. And I was like, ooh, that sounds fancy. Like, what's that? And I never worked at a car dealership before. So go to the job interview. I walk in. It felt right. It will later become like a very toxic environment but that's another story. You're there for certain seasons. It just felt right. Interview, felt right. Talked to one of the girls that worked there. It felt right. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And as a business development representative, it sounds a little bit more fancy than what it was, but it was still a job. So basically, working at the car dealership, when people go online and they inquire about a vehicle they saw online, you basically respond, answer questions about the vehicle, send them preliminary quotes, set the appointments, get them to come in, and you get paid commission on that. So that's what the job was. Everything was good on the job interview. It felt like the right place for me to be, right? The guy was like, okay, you should hear back from me in 2 days. 2 days passed, and he actually called me back, and he was like, you know what, like, you got the job. And I was like, yay, I got the job. So this would be the second job interview that I had in Dallas. God opened the door and I got the job. So it wasn't even like a long, it wasn't like a long time or whatever before me, getting a job. It just, God opened the door just like that. And started working at the job, was working with 3 other young ladies. And let me tell you, we all worked off of commission. I come from a sales environment, so my mentality is a little different. Like, I have really good work ethics. Like, especially if it's all commission, like, I'm gonna put in the work. So every time you answer a call, you gotta set that appointment. Every time someone sends an email, the objective is to set an appointment. The more people you get into the car dealership, the more money you make. And the girls that was working there, they were just a little, content. I won't say lazy. They were a little content. So once I get in there, I start setting the appointments and I'm passing them up, and I've only been at the job for a few weeks. So of course, people start to get jealous, and it started off good the first couple of weeks, and then after that, it just became a very, very toxic environment. I mean, the energy at that job was so thick. As soon as I walked in the office, they didn't want to speak to me. They were mad, and they were also mad because they trained me. And then I elevated to another level and surpassed them, but it was just me. There was this type of person that I am, like, and I was older. I was like probably 10, 15 years older. So I'm living on my own. So my drive, and my focus is going to be a lot different for someone who was in their early 20s when I was in my late 30s at that time. And I'm living in a state where I didn't know anyone. So I was working there, and it just was like, man, like, God, like, okay, I'm just not feeling this job anymore. Like, I just cannot do this. I worked there for like 3 months, and I started dreading going there. And one of the things was, I know when I worked at the other insurance company, the last company I left, I told myself, I was like, I don't care what the situation is. I was like, I will never be in a work environment if it's causing me to be depressed, stressed, and a mess. So, and again, what I didn't understand was that was the first door that God opened for me. It did, and that was a season that I was in. It didn't mean that it was meant for me to be at that job permanently, right? So I was there for a season, and the pay was like really good, and I was able to, save some money and had like a little cushion. So was working there, and I was like, oh, I worked there for 3 months in that department. And then the sales department, the people who actually sold cars, they were making like way more money. And I was like, you know what? I come from a sales environment. I could actually do it. So I transitioned from the business development representative to a car salesman. I didn't know anything about cars, and I had never sold cars before. So to make a long story short, the first month I did really good. I sold 10 cars, probably like 13 or 14, but some of the deals I had to split because if someone helps you, then you split it. So it's considered a half. So on paper, it showed 10, but I probably sold like 13, 14 cars. And it was really good. And I actually broke a record of, and I forgot the proper terminology, but I sold what was it, a cat scat or something like that. You guys that know about cars, it was a Dodge. I forgot. I'll put it in the description if I think about it. But it was like a $90,000 car, and it was like the biggest like commission that anyone ever made, and I did it. Okay, God granted me favor. He opened up the door. It was like a really big commission check that I received from one vehicle, and I was able to take that money and then save it and put it away. So that was that. God opened up the door, but I worked in the sales department for a month, but it was time for me to leave. I did not know what I was going to do, where I was going to work at. I didn't have a job lined up, but that company was so toxic where I left. So I put in my notice and I left without even having a job lined up. But I had faith that God was going to open up another door for me, and he was going to provide the provision, and that he didn't want to take me back to what he delivered me from, right? Which was stress, depressed, and mess. So I had enough sense to know, like, okay, this is not God. Like, my season is up. It started making sense. Like, my season is up. So I put in my notice and I left. And I didn't know what was next. And then after like the next month, I had a little money saved, but I didn't have a lot of money saved. So the next month I was like, okay, God, like, what are we gonna do? So, man, I was filling out job applications. So I found another car dealership that was hiring for a business development rep. So I knew that I didn't want to be a car salesman or saleswoman, because I ain't a man. But I had experience now. Worked at a car dealership. I worked as a salesman. I worked in a business development rep. I knew some of the lingo. So there was another car dealership that was hiring, filled out the application, went on the interview. I got hired on the spot as a business development rep. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this is going to be a different environment. Maybe they're going to be more professional. Maybe it's less toxic. I worked there for a few months and it wasn't any better. It was not any better. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? Like, God, is this you? I even got a second job because the pay wasn't enough. It was actually less pay. And I didn't know. It was just a lot of stuff. Get all the information, get all the details up front. So ended up working 2 jobs in Dallas, been there for a few months, don't know anyone, don't have any friends, no family. It's just me and the Lord. And I'm just trying to get it together. I'm just trying to, you know what I mean? Trying to find my path. Like, what are we doing? How am I gonna do this? And I wasn't used to like struggling like that. But it was a season for everything. Like, it was elevating my faith to another level. And so working at the car dealership, working another job, and I remember I was like, you know what? Why am I here? I can go back to insurance. The pay is like way better. I'm familiar with insurance. There's like thousands of insurance companies that are hiring. And there are a lot of companies that are hiring for people to work remote. Although the company that I came from was toxic, I can just look for another company. Now, my friends from California had now migrated to another insurance company. So everything was going good. I heard good things about the company. It was like a startup. And I was like, you know what? And I started feeling excited again. Like, I should get back in insurance. I should go back and just work with all my friends. So I hit up one of my friends And he's like, yeah, you're working out of state. They're not hiring anybody that works out of state, because there was a girl that applied for the job and she worked 2 hours away from the location and they wouldn't hire her. And I was like, man, let me check on another friend that worked for the company. So I called my other friend. I was like, girl, like, yeah, I'm looking for a job. Oh, send me your resume. Right away, I sent her my resume, got the job interview, right? And again, sometimes when people are telling you the reality of a situation, it's not that they're jealous or hating. Like my friend said that they weren't hiring people who live, well, that was a fact, but that wasn't a fact for me, because God would open up the door for me, right? So that's the thing. Filled out the application, had a job interview. So the person that was doing the job interview was like, oh, you know this person? Oh yeah, you know so-and-so. Like, oh yeah, I'll move you on to the second interview. I was like, cool, I'm excited. I was like, I'm gonna be working with my friends again. It's a new company, the environment is good. Like I said, I heard all these good things about the company. And I get a call a few days later and he tells me, he was like, yeah, the hiring manager doesn't want to interview you. He said, you seem like you're all over the place. You moved from California to Dallas. You worked at a car dealership. Now you're coming back to insurance. He was like, I just don't understand. He was like, you know everyone. You seem like a good fit. He was like, I'm so sorry. And then I was disappointed. I was like, oh, maybe it's just not meant for me to be in insurance again. I don't know. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to work super hard at the job that I currently have, which was at the car dealership. I'm gonna just put in the hours, put in the work. I just got to do what I got to do. I'm driving one day to work. I'm driving in the morning, right? I'm praying. I was very specific about my prayer. I was like, God, if this is where you want me to be, I'll be here. But these are my requirements. Like, I want to make this amount of money. I want to do this. I want to be able to travel. I want vacation. I want all these things. Drive to work, get there, clock in, and I was like, I'm gonna just be grateful. I'm not gonna be negative. I'm not gonna be doubtful. I'm just gonna be grateful for whatever it is, what season God has me in right now, and for the doors that God had opened at that season. Working, go on my lunch break, get a call from the guy that interviewed me for the insurance company, right? Hey, Kisha. I'm like, hey. He was like, I bet you thought you'd never hear from me again. And I was like, no, what's going on? He was like, I've been doing this for 17 years. And in the 17 years, I've never experienced this. And I was like, well, what is it haven't you experienced? He said, and I'm being dramatic, but I was excited, okay? He was like, your name came up in an interview. And I don't know if I want to mention the person's name, but he has granted me so much favor and God has used them. And Greg was like, Kisha Moore? And he was like, yeah, Kisha Moore. And he told another manager, I want you to call her and see what's going on with her. And I was like, what? Here's the thing. That's why it's so important to keep your integrity. Past companies that I worked for him at another company or whatever. He knew me, he knew my character, he knew my integrity, right? So he was able to vouch for me and he was able to give me an opportunity and open a door when everybody else did not want to open the door because he knew who I was. So years later, Greg knew. Kisha Moore, she has glory to God. Kisha Moore, she has integrity. Kisha Moore, she has character. He told the other manager, I want you to call her and see what's going on. I ended up getting a second interview. Got the interview with another manager. He was like, and I knew this other manager. I don't want to say his name. I can't say everybody's name or whatever. I knew this other manager and he knew me too. He was like, basically like low-key telling me like, yeah, we're going to hire you. So the interview went good. He was like, yeah, if you hear back from me, wink, wink, I'm going to set you up with the interview with the other one of the hiring managers and the other team leads. And we'll kind of take it from there. I hang up. I was like, that's it. I got the job. God opened up the door. 2 days later, I had the job interview with the hiring manager, the other two managers. 2 days after that, they told me, you're hired. Now, let me go ahead and elaborate on this. God granted me favor and he opened the door. Remember, that company, the insurance company, was actually based in California. They were not hiring anyone who worked out of state. I was the only person who they hired that worked out of state. They wouldn't even hire anyone who lived 2 hours away from the job because of the distance, but they hired me. That was God. God opened up the door for me. God was already showing me, like, daughter, like, I have you. You think I'm gonna call you in the wilderness? You think I'm gonna call you from one state to another without knowing anybody? You think I'm gonna tell you to move from one state to another without providing provision? Because I listened to the voice of God, because I did what he told me to do, because I was clear. Even when it didn't seem like it was right, I was in a season and I was where God had told me to be at. So I was obedient and I did it, and he opened up that door for me. That job was like the most pay that I had ever been paid in my entire life. Like that was the highest pay that I had ever received in my entire life. All right. So I want you guys to catch that. And that's not bragging. It was just giving glory to God. And I was very specific about the income that I wanted to receive. And God granted me that plus more. Right. So when God is calling you to do something, when God is telling you to do something, even if it doesn't happen right away, even if you are not in the season to do it, because he may download something in your spirit that may happen 2 days later, that may happen a week later, that may happen years later. If you know it's from God, just believe it. Just walk on faith and just do it. And if God is the provider, if God is the creator of the universe, he is going to open up the doors for someone to give you an opportunity, for someone to bless you, and for you to have peace wherever you are. So I am getting hyped up because I'm thinking about it. Like, God came through in a real way. Okay, he came through in a real way because God is faithful. God is the provider. He is just like everything. So I ended up getting a job. I worked there and it was amazing. And one of the good things is it was like the past experience working in the insurance company. I mean, it didn't always start off bad. It ended up, toxic, but this was like a new season, a new company, some of the same friends I had plus new friends. It just felt so good to be back in insurance. And again, there is a season for everything. Maybe it was a season for me to work in insurance. Maybe I stayed too long. That's why I got burnt out, right? Sometimes you can stay at a place so long and you just receive like burnout, and that's okay too. Just pray and be like, God, this is how I'm feeling. This is not your best for me. So where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do with this? So I just want to encourage anyone who is watching this video to just be okay with walking with the Lord without knowing all the details. Moving when God tells you to move without knowing all the details, right? If he's telling you to do it, you have to know. You have to know that he is going to open up amazing doors. He's going to provide for you. And sometimes God will call you to leave your old environment into a new environment so that your mind can be renewed to new things. If you're only around people who are not changing, who are not growing, and that's all you're around, how can you grow in an environment that's not growing? How can you grow in an environment that's not conducive to your spirit? How can you grow around people who want to just stay negative and talk about negative things and just dwell on the past and just dwell on what was not or what did not happen? You know what I mean? So I believe that God told me to move because he wanted me to get closer to him. He wanted me to elevate my faith. He had to get me out of the old environment so that he can show me new things, right? So I just want to encourage you. Even within the time when it didn't feel good, even when I was at work and the people were toxic and the girls were hating because I was making more sales than them, that was just a temporary season. That was just a temporary season, okay? Seasons don't last always, okay? So just know when the season is over. So just to recap, because I know I talked about a lot. I moved from California to Dallas without ever visiting Dallas, without ever stepping foot in Dallas, with $700 in my pocket, without knowing anyone, without having any friends, without having, excuse that, without having a job lined up and just recovering from an illness. I did it. I stepped out on faith. And when I stepped out on faith, my faith elevated to another level. And there's nothing that anybody can tell me about what God won't and what he can't do. Even when times got hard, I thought about it. God, did you tell me to do this? And God said, yes, I did. And I stuck with it. And God stuck with me. So, more faith with Kisha. All things faith. I have so many other testimonies of the amazing things that God has done in my life and doors that he has opened. Again, you can purchase my book, Testimonies of a Faithful God, at morefaithwithkisha.com and be inspired. So on this channel, I will talk about all things faith. And I said that already. I'm just excited. I just pump myself up, remembering everything that God did for me. Stay blessed and don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to share. Bye.